Why is music so pivotal in anime, and why does it influence us so much? Let's talk about it. Alright, guys. Sorry, I'm actually a few days late. I was saying that I was going to be doing it about every 2 weeks. A few days late, was getting back from a wedding. But today we are going to talk about music and anime, one of my favorite all-time subjects about anime. And why it's so influential to us as the viewers. And of course, if you are a little bit newer to this, and maybe you've only gotten into one or two animes, it probably won't be hard for you to at least notice some of the trends that anime has. Most animes will, of course, have an opening and an ending, which is the title scene that plays in the beginning of the anime, and the credits at the end played or accompanied by a song. Usually, it's at this point there's a lot of kind of up and coming actual artists that are doing it, but a lot of time, especially a couple years back, it was kind of some big, well known Japanese music writers and idols that were writing the music and openings for these things, like Lisa and Yasubai is still doing some. But anyways, you at least can see that trend. The more big topic I'm talking about today is actually going to be specifically on OSTs, which is original soundtrack. If you're any type of music listener in any type of soundtrack, be it the Pirates of the Caribbean or just Hans Zimmer in general, or really just movies and have amazing soundtrack if you can think about them, or TV shows, you'll know that a good soundtrack, of course, only ever benefits the show or movie. Anytime we're watching something and we can essentially use music to kind of portray emotion, especially, it's very, very important. And anime does that especially. One of my favorite things about anime is, of course, if you watch any type of action anime, you're going to have all of the cool rock stuff going on. It's usually going to be pumped up music. There's fights. Anime that comes to my mind all the time is Fairy Tail. And you can go through album and album of Fairy Tail soundtrack and just see absolute bangers. And it's always, the hero's about to get beat up, and all of a sudden, as soon as they start feeling like a overwhelming power and surge of power, all of a sudden you just hear heavy music just start just roaring in the background and making you just pumped up for it. So anime, I feel, uses music, of course, just like how live action shows can use it to portray emotion, but I feel like it does it more importantly because these are 2D animated characters. These aren't real people. So we can't judge a facial expression of an anime character like we can an actual human being. When you're watching a show like The Good Doctor, or you're watching even comedies like The Office or something, you as a viewer can usually understand the emotion on screen just by actually watching them. You can understand some of the actual mannerisms certain people have or the body language they hold to kind of show how you're feeling on this. Anime, because again, it's drawings and animation on faces that are not actually faces that match the contours of our own. It's very important for the community of creators that create anime to be able to portray emotion in certain situations, well, in most situations. Another good one, I know I've talked about this a lot, but I've been watching the second season a lot. So in Masamune Kuni's Revenge, there's a piano that will constantly play whenever he's in a situation where essentially he has to choose option A or option B. And it's usually a really tense or serious situation for him. And of course, they're giving you the monologue and the inner monologue that he has, and you could tell that, yes, this is a tough choice, but it's just those few piano keys that will click, and you're just like, oh man, like this is. I, and I could just be maybe reading into this. This is one of the things that I specifically love and exclusive to anime. I feel is that they try to portray every emotion. They try to portray sad. They try to portray happy. Everything. It's not. I feel like more in, especially cinema, you're more gonna get those banger soundtracks in action. There are, of course, other shows and movies that have amazing soundtracks. I'm not dissing on anybody. But I feel like anime specifically goes over the top to make sure even little shows where it's literally it's a rom-com, like it's just a fun silly show, it goes the extra step to make sure every emotion is kind of portrayed with these different sounds. You'll also see in anime specifically, you'll usually, like if you ever go and look on albums, you'll see character themes. So you'll see like Fairy Tail again, you'll see Natsu's theme, Wendy's theme, Urza's theme. You'll just see all these different characters have themes, and they're always cool, and they are always usually unique, maybe tweaked here and there for different scenarios, but they're unique to those characters, and they use those for like entrances or thoughts when those characters are there. Like one of my favorite things in Fairy Tail is when Natsu comes back from his training arc. I'm not going to spoil too much if anybody who wants to watch the show, but Natsu goes on the training arc, comes back to the arena where the Grand Magic Games is at, and before you even see him hit the screen, like there's just stuff going on in the arena, people are fighting, they're doing whatever. Before you even see Natsu, you immediately hear Natsu's theme. And I would easily say about 100% of the audience, when they were watching that show, knew he was about to appear, and he hadn't appeared for a while. So all of a sudden they hear the actual theme song go for him, and they're like, everybody, I know me and my siblings are like, oh snap. And then you just start seeing the arena melt, and you look and there's Natsu, and it was just like a goosebump scene. Another one using a theme is actually in the Grand Magic Games when they are fighting. Natsu pushes Gaji all the way to go 1 versus 2 against Sting and Rogue. As soon as he does that, the music completely changes and highlights another theme of him taking over and becoming more powerful. So super cool. Another way, I'm going to keep using Fairy Tail. The reason I'll use Fairy Tail, again, is Fairy Tail is a very long mainstream anime that through the entire time, they still did all of these different songs. Like I have probably like 6 or 7, and I think there's like 10 albums of just soundtrack, not even like openings and endings, but just soundtrack for Fairy Tail. And that's true with a lot of other shows as well, but Fairy Tail being one of the first big main animes I ever got into, that's another reason that I do have a little bias towards it, but I fell in love with the show, and music was one of the reasons. But another good one is they'll also use music for mystery. They do this, for example, there's a character called Mystigan. You don't know too much about him or anything, and it turns out there's another counterpart to Mystigan called Jalal. I'm not going to get too much into that for, again, spoiler reasons. But they actually, even though they look alike and they have different things, they have 2 different themes. So you as the viewer will sometimes catch something that the actual characters in the show do not, which is also super cool to me. So they use the actual music to cue the viewer on information, whereas the show is making the characters not have that information. And that's super unique. It's like, I know something that the characters don't, and that just makes it even more special to yourself. But I would encourage, if you are newer to anime or just getting into it, first of all, of course, diversify yourself with a couple different things. Pick up an action, pick up a rom-com, pick up whatever. But with all of them, listen closely to what's going on in the background if you're not doing that. You'd actually be surprised how often you as a listener are actually doing it and you don't even realize it. If you've ever had a scene where maybe you're watching Dragon Ball or you're watching Meliodas from Seven Deadly Sins go ham on somebody, all of a sudden you get goosebumps and like no action started. I'd implore you to open up your ears a little bit more and notice that maybe, oh man, I know this song, like I've heard this, like it's about to go down or whatever. You'd be surprised how not just influential the music is to us as the listener, but how talented that just these background soundtracks on a anime are. That's another crazy thing to me. In America, most of our cartoons, maybe they have a theme song that's catchy or something, but they don't really have a soundtrack. They might have like every now and again a little thing like if you watch Scooby Doo, you're not watching Scooby Doo and like, oh man, yeah, this like when Shaggy's eating a sandwich, that music is a banger. No, like there's not music like that. Usually it's pretty quiet or there's like some type of ambience. You can of course have like banger openings like the Gravity Falls opening, banger, but you're not quite listening to background music in that. It's not quite needed because a lot of American cartoons are either just silly is usually what American cartoons thrive for. It's the silly, gimmicky, funny cartoon. Or if they are serious, they're living more in for ambience and different things. Music is not as used in the American cartoon as it is in anime in general. And you will see just hundreds upon thousands of just banger soundtrack after banger soundtrack for a show that I could list off some that only maybe one or two of you guys watching actually even know, and they would be like, yeah, that's a banger. Like a lot of people, of course, people know of Spice Wolf, a lot of people, but a few people have ever watched it. Shoot, I don't think any of my siblings have. Spice and Wolf has a constant soundtrack that is going that sets you not just in ambience, but sets you in the time era, whereas they are like still on wagons and going to villages, and the music they use, while it's influential, they use instruments that are only from that time, setting you even more into the feeling of that. And then you've got other shows that go even above the top with music, and these are usually animes that actually are about music. The two that come to mind are Bocchi the Rock and Your Lie in April. These are two that had, of course, amazing composers kind of running the show and writing the music for them. And because they are about music, they wanted to also show people flying when making music. So, for example, in Your Lie in April, there's parts where he's playing the piano and he's having problems, so he's missing notes or he's rushing, or she's playing violin and does stuff. They make that happen in the show. Like you can audibly hear them messing up, even though you're hearing the monologue and you're like, okay, he's stressed out about something. It doesn't sound like a big deal. No, they're writing the same like normal songs by Chopin or Mozart, and they're purposely writing mess ups to cue with the anime character messing up, which is to me another talent of itself. You're taking an original piece, purposely messing up certain spots so it is portrayed that way in a 2D format. That's amazing. Bocchi the Rock being about a girl who has severe anxiety and wants to start a band. She plays guitar, and being playing guitar and stuff, you can actually hear the actual different little mess ups that actual guitarists will do, from accidentally dragging fingers or accidentally muting things that you shouldn't, or just overall playing on a fret that's completely wrong, that just sets off a note, but it sounds like it's almost there, but it's not. They do a phenomenal job in shows like that. All that to say that they do that purposefully for the viewer to feel and understand what's going on in a 2D format, and that's amazing. And that's, again, kind of why music to me is a huge importance in anime. And this has been my TED Talk, but it's just kind of a ramble about if you are going to go watch an anime or you are watching an anime, I do implore you to listen, open your ears even more, listen to the soundtrack, because if there's one language that is very universal across countries, across continents, wherever, it's music. Music is something that if you strung a D chord in Japan, you struck a D chord in America, it's still a D chord. Music has just as much influence on us as it does anybody else. So to meet on a level that everybody can now understand, when we can't now look at a actual human and look at their demeanor and understand their body language, we're looking at a animated character. What is the one language that we can all understand? And it's music. And that does a phenomenal job over and over in anime to portray feelings, emotions, and excitement. So I do implore you, open your ears, check them out. You'd be surprised how much just original soundtracks I have on my phone that I play in my car and just listen to them because they're that good and impactful. It will change my demeanor when I go to work. Sometimes I'll listen to some, I'll have a rough day and I'll put on some of the songs that I know just feel uplifting. I'd even say, another thing I guess I'll say before closing this episode, is if you like video game soundtracks do kind of the exact same thing. The only difference being is because you're playing a video game and you're usually the character, or you're usually doing the different things as the character, or even if you're playing a set character, like let's say in Halo you're playing Master Chief, who does have feelings and you're just fulfilling the actual playment of the game, the music in it is background and it is supposed to kind of influence, or you feel kind of action, you feel pumped up or whatever, but it still gives you feelings. The only thing that I'll say that anime needs it even more is because with video games you can get away with, okay, they're in this area, they're fighting, okay, a little bit more action, it's got a little rock. Okay, they're in like a main character dies in the video game, okay, play something sad. Since you're playing the game and you're in the game and developed in doing something, it's easier for you to just stay in tune with the game. Whereas anime, you're only watching. You are not controlling any of the characters. You're not able to have influence on the anime at all. Yet the anime can have influence on you. And so if you are into video game soundtracks, you'd absolutely love a lot of soundtracks from animes. If you want recommendations, I've got recommendations for you. If you do want a sad anime, well, I'd say sad. It's a happy sad. But definitely don't watch it if you're in a depressed state, please. God, no. But Your Lie in April, phenomenal, hands down, amazing soundtrack. I will again say Fairy Tail. I will toot that. Fairy Tail is an amazing show for a show that just started out with the power of friendship, and it just develops more into something cool. Attack on Titan, for most people who have watched that, Attack on Titan has phenomenal soundtrack, especially for it being kind of a glooming, we're losing, we just only lose soundtrack. It does a good job of making you feel pressure like the characters in the show do. So those three are super solid. On the more lighter side of just anime in general, again, Spice and Wolf, which again, it's very well placement of making you feel like you're in the era. Bungo Stray Dogs, another amazing soundtrack, and Cowboy Bebop, which Cowboy Bebop's cool because it keeps this old gangster cowboy vibe soundtrack, but then it doesn't forget that it's still in space. It will add some cool, interesting, sci-fi sounding music into it. It's pretty interesting. Definitely worth the listen as well. But just from those animes alone, you can already grasp a huge understanding of what I'm rambling on about. I'll put it that way. But thanks for listening. This has been Let's Talk Otaku. and put down in the comments or give us a like and see what we talk about next. We do have the AnimeCon AWA coming up here in a few weeks, so I know that probably the next episode or two will be about Comic-Con. So if you've never been or you have thoughts or questions, tune in because that's what we'll be talking about. All right, let's talk Otaku. Take it out.